My name is Andrew Steinberg. Today, I will be interviewing Mr. Hugh D. Maxwell Jr. at his residence in Altamonte Springs, Florida. The interview will cover Mr. Maxwell's experiences as a pilot in the U.S. Army Air Force during World War II. The date is July 24th, 2013. Mr. Maxwell, I'd like to begin the interview with a few biographical questions. Where and when were you born?
In Duplin County, North Carolina, on 22 May 1916.
And what did your parents do for a living?
Well, my grandfather was a country doctor, and my dad, for most of his adult life, assisted him in childbirth and so on. So we lived out in the country. When my granddad died in 1932, my dad built a mill pond and mill and store, and he ran that for the rest of his life.
Wow. And how big was your family growing up?
Well, my mother and dad had me and 3 sisters and 2 brothers who died as infants.
What kind of education did you receive before joining the military?
Well, of course, I graduated from high school at B.F. Grady High School in Duplin County, North Carolina.
At what age?
Then I had just barely turned 16. I had skipped the 7th grade, and it was an 11th grade school. I was a pretty big fish in that little pond at B.F. Grady, but at just barely turned 16, I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and promptly found that I was a little fish in a very big pond. So I was class of 1936 at the University of North Carolina.
And what was your occupation before joining the military?
I was helping my dad run the mill, and also joined Bob Grady in running the Duplin Times, a county weekly newspaper out of Kenansville, North Carolina. Everybody had thought that I would be the young Dr. Maxwell and replace Granddaddy, but I bowed my back on that and majored in journalism at the University of North Carolina. So then I worked on the Duplin Times until I went into the Air Corps.
And were any of your other family members also in the military?
No, knew nothing about it.
What influenced you to join the Army Air Corps?
Harvey Turner in Pink Hill. I was 2 miles out of Pink Hill at Maxwell's Mill. Harvey Turner in Pink Hill, friend of mine, I don't know how he found out about the Flying Cadet program, but he did, and he persuaded me to apply along with him for a Flying Cadet appointment. I had had an automobile accident my senior year in high school.
Motorcycle.
A motorcycle accident, and broke my left femur, so my left leg was a little shorter than the right one, and I knew I couldn't possibly pass the physical, for Flying Cadet. But I figured, what the heck, I could get a free medical exam out of it. So Harvey and I filled out all the paperwork, sent it to Atlanta. The Army checked everything, did background checks on us, and finally came through and sent us to Pope Field at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, for a medical exam. There were 18 in that group that day, and 2 of us passed it. I was one of the 2. Hardy didn't. His blood pressure was too high. But that's how I got into the Flying Cadet program.
Wow. And how old were you when you joined?
24.
Wow. And what year was that?
Well, we started in 1939 with the applications. It was early 1940 before they scheduled us for the physical exam, and then had to wait for a class. So I actually enlisted as a Flying Cadet on 30 December of 1940. Put us on a milk train that went down to Atlanta. We spent New Year's Eve in Atlanta, Georgia in a rail yard in the train, and on to Jackson, Mississippi Institute of Aeronautics for primary flying training. Most of us assumed this was going to be like college. Some of the boys took tennis rackets and golf clubs, and J.C. Holbrook Red drove his new Pontiac Phaeton convertible touring car. And we got a rude shock when we arrived at Mississippi Institute of Aeronautics. It wasn't like college at all.
So, what type of aviation training did you receive as a flying cadet? What type of aviation training did you receive?
At primary flying school at Mississippi Institute of Aeronautics, we flew the PT-17 Stearman biplane, basic airplane, very reliable, but open cockpit, minimum instrumentation. For example, the airspeed instrument we had was covered up so you wouldn't even be able to see it. They wanted us to have the feel for the airplane and judge our airspeed by the sound of the struts between the wings and so on. But gravity feed carburation. So when you rolled over on your back in aerobatics, the engine died until you were back right side up again. Sid Taylor used to say when he was upside down, hanging by his seat belt in that open cockpit, with his hand on the throttle and his other hand on his stick, that he could feel rigor mortis setting in. But we finished primary flying school there, then went to Gunter Field at Montgomery, Alabama, for basic, flying Vultee BT-13s, which is a basic trainer. When we finished there, we moved right across town to Maxwell Field for advanced training, and there it was AT-6s, North American Texan advanced trainer, with everything, with retractable landing gear and radio and full instrumentation and so on. So that was my flying cadet training.
Huh. What was it like flying an aircraft for the first time?
Well, it was a little scary, but you got used to it very quickly. And I had very little trouble with the actual flying, but we had our experiences. We in advanced flying school, on our last day-night cross-country before graduation, we took off from Maxwell, flew west to the Mississippi River, up the river to an alternate field where we landed, waited until after dark, and then took off at intervals to head to Birmingham, and from there back down to Montgomery. But we ran into a squall line of thunderstorms on the way to Birmingham, and ended up with AT-6s scattered all over the Alabama countryside, a couple dead. Jerry Grell said that he was flying in this thunderstorm, and suddenly a flash of lightning illuminated the mountain he was flying right into. So he hauled back on the stick, opened his canopy, and bailed out. Well, the seat pack parachutes that we use, as always, were too big for us. And Jerry found himself falling for a while, and then the up currents from the thunderstorm would lift him and back up, and he would fall some more, and the riser straps on the chute were about to cut his throat and cut his head off. But he made it. I got to Birmingham, and in the weather, and they had an AT-6 with an instructor pilot sitting on the ground, acting as the flight director. He told me that I would have to circle the field, that they had a crashed airplane on the runway and would have to get it removed before I could land. I told him that I didn't have much fuel left, I couldn't circle for very long. And suddenly here came another airplane flying the wrong way and almost hit me. And so I yelled out, to get that SOB who's flying a right-hand traffic pattern back into a left-hand traffic pattern. He's going to kill somebody. And shortly, here he came again and just barely missed me. Well, I landed. We slept on the floor of a hangar, those of us who had made it to Birmingham. And next morning, in clear weather, I saw the statue of Vulcan, which is on the hill overlooking Birmingham, and its light was the airplane which had almost hit me twice. But that type of thing we ran into.
When did you receive your commission and your wings?
16 August 1941. I pinned on my second lieutenant's bars and my pilot's wings, opened the orders to my first duty station. It was Orlando Air Base, Orlando, Florida. And of course, you know, people now think McCoy. There wasn't any McCoy. What is now Herndon Field was our airfield, and what later became the Navy Training Center was our base. And when I got here, I was assigned to the 3rd Reconnaissance Squadron. It had 2 B-18 airplanes, one of which was a Hangar Queen that was cannibalized to keep the other one going. And that's what we flew until the war started.
How did you first hear about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor?
With this single airplane, we were starting to get more pilots. And we didn't have the aircraft, you know, to really keep everybody up to date. So on a trip to Bowling Field at Washington, D.C., we had about 6 pilots who were taking turns as pilots of the B-18. We made the trip up there, and we're coming back, going to refuel in Charleston, South Carolina. And as we called the tower at Charleston, the tower operator said, "Hey, we've just been attacked at Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. Do you know where Pearl Harbor is?" And we didn't. But that was where I was at the beginning of the war.
What were your first thoughts when you heard that America had been attacked?
I was too naive to really have too much thoughts about it, but I had known that we were going to get in this war. I told people in 1939 that you know, we were just getting out of the Depression, hadn't really emerged from it fully. Hitler was running wild all over Europe. We had isolationists who were screaming for us to stay out of that war. But as I said, any fool with one eye and half sense could see that we were going to have to get in it to save Europe. So I wasn't too surprised when we were attacked.
And where were you stationed after Orlando Air Base?
7 December happened. We promptly took a train to Phoenix, Arizona, and picked up our B-25s, which was a North American Billy Mitchell twin-engine bomber, tricycle landing gear, twin tails, red-hot airplane, and promptly left here and went to Mitchell Field, New York, and started flying out a submarine patrol out over the Atlantic. Navy was caught more by surprise than was the Air Corps by the attack at Pearl Harbor. And Navy had absolutely no capability for fighting the submarines which started attacking all of our shipping on the East Coast. There are many books which will point out to you that the losses to submarines was actually more dangerous than was the attack on Pearl Harbor. It did us more damage. But at any rate, the Air Corps started flying out of submarine patrols out over the Atlantic. And we did that from Mitchell Field